The anime subgenre, Girls with Guns, is a diverse and insanely cool world where, get this, there are girls and they have guns. Crazy, I know. Couple things before we get into it though. I recommend each one I talk about for different reasons, so while I won't touch on any major spoilers, I will be touching on enough to give you a picture of what each one is like, along with my viewing experience. Also, they are in no specific order, but I'd love to hear your favorite Girls with Guns anime in the comments. Now let's get into it. Canaan is a 2009 action thriller that follows a variety of interesting and complex characters, with the most notable being Canaan herself. Canaan is what's called a synesthete, which means she has an extra sense that she can use in her work as a mercenary. This ability allows her to see the feelings and whereabouts of others based off the colors they emit. Canaan is probably my favorite thing about this series, because not only is she super cool when she's taking down terrorists, but she's also very caring and protective of her friend Maria and has an interesting past that connects to the main villain Alfred. This makes her a very interesting and complex character who's a lot of fun to watch, especially when paired with some of the other characters. While she's the girl with the gun, and the series is named after her, she's not actually the main character. That honor would go to Maria, who's also awesome, or dare I say, sugoi. She's the second best character, and is a very interesting protagonist to choose for this kind of story. Maria is a wide-eyed photographer that came with her partner Minoru, who's very happy to be paired, by the way. Minoru's attitude to Maria quickly changes when he sees Canaan and learns that Maria is her best friend. Also, fun fact, apparently this is a sequel of sorts to a Japanese visual novel called 428 Shibuya Scramble, which is the only visual novel to get basically a perfect score and partially follows Minoru on a different story. But you don't need to have played the game to understand this anime. Throughout the adventure, we pick up a few more characters who range from pretty good to kind of annoying in my opinion, with my least favorite being Hako by far. Now I won't spoil, but let's just say this girl's got some issues, and eventually makes out with a corpse.
You what?
I'm sorry. Oh. The villains also get a fair amount of screen time, with Alfred being a pretty cool and intimidating villain who's the leader of a terrorist organization called Snakes.
Snakes? Snakes. I don't know no snakes.
That organization uses something called a UA virus that basically blows the infected person up after a certain amount of time, unless they get the vaccine. The other notable villain is her top lieutenant, Lang Qiu, who's totally stable. Also, the animation is done by PA Works, and I personally really like the character designs and style. The animation is consistently fluid and works especially well for the action and the overall more serious tone. The big thing that sets Canaan apart from the other anime on this list is its espionage tone, filled with terrorism, biochemical warfare, revenge, and singing Chinese idol songs during a car chase. The whole thing with synesthete, along with the UA virus, affects the plot and adds another layer of depth. It's not all gunfights and virus lore drops, however, as the anime can be pretty charming sometimes when the characters are given some downtime. Also, similar to some others on this list, the attention and detail in the guns is incredibly satisfying. Whether Canaan is simply putting a gun together or blasting people with said gun, it's awesome. Also, I forgot to mention that as we go, I will also be doing a tier ranking of each of the series' openings and endings. For me, the ending is probably a C. It's a fittingly, hauntingly beautiful tone that is quite cool, but nothing to write home about. The opening, however, is an easy S, with cool visuals and the build-up to the song alone making it very fun to watch. On a totally different note, Gunsmith Cats is a 1996 3-part OVA, and it's so good. For those who don't know, an OVA is simply an original video animation that instead of being a series on TV or a movie in theaters, it would go straight to VHS. The OVA follows Rally, who's a Chicago gunsmith owner and bounty hunter who loves her job. And her teenage sidekick May, who loves explosions maybe a little too much. After Rally and May successfully catch a bounty, a laid-back agent named Bill shows up and essentially blackmails them into helping him with the case.
Class 3 ライセンスを必要とする銃器の不法所持。
I really love Rally's character. She's got the right amount of cool and funny energy that makes her potentially my favorite character out of all the anime we'll be talking about today. The thing I love the most about the OVA is its personality and energy. Rally, May, and Bill all have amazing dynamics, which are brought to life through the expressive visuals. I've stated this in a previous video, but I adore how 80s and 90s anime look, and Gunsmith Cats further cemented that love for me. The third part doesn't look quite as good as the first two, but even then, it still looks quite nice. When action happens, it feels amazing, with the standout being the car chase in the second episode. Another noteworthy aspect of the anime is its attention to detail on Chicago and guns. The crew who worked on the OVA went in towards Chicago to get the tone, feel, and look of the place just right, and they even went to actual gun shops and shot different guns to understand how they look and feel. And it shows. I only have a couple complaints. So the first episode is really good and has some of my favorite gunfights, but the only issue is the director, or probably the manga author, really wanted Raleigh to be wearing as little as possible during said gunfights. Literally in the climax of the episode, we're in the middle of some really cool gun stuff going on, but then a crane comes and steals her clothes right off. I get that's a 90s action anime, but it was annoying nonetheless. I also mentioned this earlier, but in the third part, the animation quality goes down a noticeable amount. Other than that, the action is amazing, the characters are distinct and memorable, and the animation is gorgeous. As for the ending, I'm gonna have to give it a D. The jazz music is nice and fits the tone and vibe of the OVA well, but there's no vocals or visuals for the credits, which I would have preferred. The opening gets a solid B though, as it has amazing visuals, and the jazz mixed with the guitar gets you excited to see what Rally and crew are gonna get into this time. Also, I brought a special guest to talk about the next anime. Take it away, Zach.
体育ってふんふんふんふんふんふんふんふんって曲だよね。Freude, schnell geht der Funken durch der Auserleben. Wir betreten Feuer trunken in die Städte Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was der
You can sometimes tell, just from looking at the style, if an anime is tragic or not. Gunslinger Girl was in that category for me. Maybe it has something to do with how drained the entire anime is of life and color, but I digress. In Gunslinger Girl, we follow a small group of young girls who are employed by a military organization to carry out hits on a variety of individuals. And if that wasn't bad enough, it's made clear to us very early on that this military organization only employs girls that are very young and that has been previously subjugated to accidents that hospitalize them. As why? Well, it's because it'll be easier to cyborgify and brainwash them. Duh! The mission and hits that these girls have to deal with can be quite merciless, whether it be having to kill a boy whom one of them has a crush on simply because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, to a man who simply wants to get home and see his children. These girls might be cold-hearted killers who are mostly robots and slaves to their employers and caretakers. And I'm not trying to justify what they do, but they still feel, they still cry, they still bleed, they are still just children with normal emotions at heart. We see how they deal with their different emotions, traumas, and hardships. The brainwashing is said to shorten the lifespan of these girls by a lot. That is if they're not killed during action, but they still hang on to every last bit of normalcy and humanity that they have, and try to enjoy it and what they have whilst they can, knowing that death could be around every other corner. Gunslinger Girl is definitely the most melancholic and perhaps slow anime on this list, but those exact qualities are what makes it a good watch. Okay, bye.
One final thing before we move on. The opening is a solid A in my opinion. The song itself is quite peaceful by itself, but the violence and guns contradict it nicely. I especially like where near the end of the song it sounds really hopeful and you're reminded of the innocence of the girls, and it's really, honestly quite powerful. The ending though is a C for me. It's an Italian opera song which fits the tone and setting really well, but it's not really my style. Noir is a 2001 26-episode anime. Allow me to walk you through some of my viewing experience. So I pulled up the first episode, and am immediately struck by the unique visual style, with focus on sunsets and silhouettes and windows shining with amazing 90s flair. The animation is unsurprisingly pretty stiff, but they made up for it with visual flair. The main character Muriel is an assassin for hire, but is following the Squirrel Girl because she received an anonymous email that said she could help her learn about her past. Then some bad guys show up and we see their skills in action, and apparently this Squirrel Girl is very good at killing. What's interesting about this girl is that she doesn't know her family, why she can kill, or even her actual name. The only thing she knows was that the name on her ID wasn't her real name, and that Muriel could somehow help her learn her past. So they decided to band together for the moment to learn about their own pasts, but once the past is found, Muriel said she would kill her because she's seen her face. The ending is a solid S for me. The combination of the beat, soothing tone, and very aesthetic visuals are stunning. The opening kinda sucks though, but it has a few cool visual moments, so I'm gonna give it a D. So needless to say, my expectations were high going forward, but the show suddenly has a very drastic slowing of pace. The backgrounds were still gorgeous, but the visual flair was happening a lot less. There was one episode where they used the same flashback 3 different times without changing or adding anything to it. There are moments where guns are pointed that last absolutely forever. The villains can be pretty bland as well, with a lot of wealthy businessmen or corrupt government officials, and the two main leads are honestly pretty boring, with nothing particularly noteworthy of either of them in comparison to the others on this list. So at this point you're probably wondering why I have this anime on the list. Well, there's actually a couple of reasons why. The first is that while it has a slow pace, things do indeed get more interesting once it gets going. For example, in episode 8, there's a villain that is actually interesting and ties into Muriel's past and has stakes. There's another earlier episode where they have a dilemma because they were hired to kill a man who basically ran a concentration camp, but dropped out and spent the rest of his life serving others. Does all that kindness make up for his past actions, or does he deserve to die? At around this point, the visuals start getting more dynamic and interesting again, and the backgrounds and settings look amazing throughout the whole anime. The music throughout a lot of the series is also quite solid, kind of like a combination of Death Note and Sailor Moon, if that makes any sense. And the plot and mystery of their past is enough of a reason to stay invested. Be prepared for a slower burn if you give this one a go, but just know there's genuinely good stuff in there if you do check it out. And as the polar opposite of Noir and Gunslinger Girl, we've got Lycoris Recoil, which is a 2022 original anime series which has 13 episodes. I've touched on Lycoris Recoil a bit in one of my previous videos, but for those who haven't seen the video yet, basically the series is a buddy cop action comedy with slice of life elements. Similar to Gunslinger Girl, Japan has a secret organization of teenage girls who take down terrorists in secret so that the average person can live in ignorance of crime. But unlike Gunslinger, Lycoris is a very wholesome and fun time. As I mentioned, this is a buddy cop girls with guns, so a lot of the appeal comes from the interactions and friendship between the two main leads, Takina and Chisato. They're fun to watch both from a friendship perspective as well as a combat perspective. In combat, Takina is really good at shooting at a distance and doesn't mind shooting to kill, but she's not as good at defense and close quarters gunfights. Chisato, however, is insane in close quarters gunplay, and is also really good at dodging bullets if she can see them coming. But she uses non-lethal bullets, so she has to be fairly close for her bullets to land. This makes the gunfights dynamic and a ton of fun to watch. Chisato's ability to dodge bullets is kind of similar to Canaan's color ability, so it's interesting to see how Chisato generally uses her abilities with a much more lighthearted personality. Come to think of it, something looks familiar here. Anyways, Takina starts off quite reserved and focused solely on missions, whereas Chisato is very bubbly and outgoing and is here to have fun and do what she feels is right instead of what the missions call for. The other aspect that sets Lycoris apart from the other girls with guns we've covered is the slice of life elements. This series has, for the most part, a pretty light tone, with characters spending a day out and visiting the aquarium one moment and then taking down a terrorist group the next. So there's some politics, and the anime takes itself seriously when it needs to, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is on the relationship between Takina and Chisato and watching their friendship grow. As for my criticisms, I don't have very many. It would have been nice if we had gotten more episodes, but hopefully the miniseries coming out really soon is a good sign. The opening is also a solid A for me. It's pretty impressive how it shows the personality and tone of the anime, along with how it is both a slice of life and action girls with guns anime. The ending is pretty good too, focusing exclusively on Takina and Shizato. It's cute, but not amazing, so I'm giving it a B. And that's the list. I'd love to hear what your favorite Girls with Guns characters or anime are in the comments. Hopefully you had a good time or learned about a new anime to check out. If so, subscribing and sharing this video would be a huge help to me. Also, be sure to check out Zach Cern's channel. He's got some great stuff on there. And with that, have an amazing rest of your day.
I wanna take you out.